Everybody who sees us wants the joy, wants the enthusiasm, wants the energy. We don't have it. We find it. We get it. We dance with the pond, and it gives us back this wonderful feeling, and everybody wants it.
This is Life's Tough, Explorers Are Tougher, and I'm your host, Richard Wiese. Scratch the surface of an explorer, and you'll find an adventure and a great story. This show is about their tales. This podcast is a proud supporter of the Explorers Club and the EC50 initiative, 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. For more information, go to explorers.org. Welcome to Life's Tough, Explorers Are Tougher in association with the Explorers Club. I'm your host, Richard Wiese. You know you're in for something special when the name alone makes you laugh, think, and want to join the team. And that's how I felt when I first heard about Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. And I thought, this is probably some sort of comedy team or maybe even a punk rock band. But no, it's even better. It's a group of women ages 64 to 85 who put on wetsuits and clean Cape Cod ponds from the bottom up, literally. Founded by Susan Baur, a psychologist turned philosopher turned pond cleaning powerhouse, this group doesn't just remove garbage, they remove assumptions about age limits and what it means to live with purpose. Susan is sharp, funny, unapologetically original, and conversations with her can go from pond scum to Play-Doh. Susan, welcome to the show.
That was a great introduction. Thank you, Richard. I'm glad you're recording this.
You and I were actually just talking before we went on air, and I think we realized when we met each other up at Cape Cod that we just enjoyed talking about a lot of subjects together.
Yes.
So tell me about Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. When I heard the title, I said, this is just too good to pass up, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I know subsequently, every time I mention the name of the group, people go, oh, I love that. And so they automatically go, I love that.
Yeah, and they love us. I'm going to give you the short version because I get tired of, going over and over the same sort of things. So in 2018, I spent 18 years swimming alone with pond turtles, and that's another story, but that's what I did. And at first, when I would see the beer cans and the golf balls, they made me happy because I was new to pond swimming. It was muddy, it was full of snapping turtles and water lilies, and I was scared to death. And so when I would see these little bits of trash, they were markers. Oh, I knew I was halfway around. I knew I was 3/4 of the way around. However, by 2018, I had tried very hard to help the turtles that I'd become so fond of. And I had names for them, like this is Spot, or this is Shy Guy, or this is Deck Baby, not to really anthropomorphize them, but to identify them. And I could pick out about 12 individuals, and they could pick out me. I would swim down the side of the pond, and when I swam back, turtle after turtle would come. They would sit in my hands. They would sit on my head. They would look and admire themselves in the reflection of my dive mask, which had a camera in it so I could film all this stuff. So I'd become very fond of them. And around 2015 or so, I went to towns and I said, let's put out charming, beautifully designed signs that say, don't go past this point, leave part of this pond wild, don't run your dog in the weed, don't let him poop on the shore. Really sort of very basic stuff. Don't drag your boat through the Plymouth gentians and the other endangered plants. Stuff you'd think would be normal. However, I had been told again and again and again, regardless of what town I went to, that's too political. That's at the bottom of a list of 100 things we have to do, and we can't possibly enforce that. So I began thinking about the trash as the one small thing I could do. I even tried making low-cost workforce housing for turtles, and I would take these huge pine branches, and people would stare as I pulled them out of the woods, and bound them together with rope. And then I would, with friends, sink them in 5 feet, 6 feet of water. And as they became waterlogged, it would take 6 weeks. And I would have a turtle, I would have the turtle's girlfriend, I would have a family. It was wonderful. And within a month, they were cut apart and dragged back on the beach. So I was just failing, failing, failing. And I thought, well, damn it, I can pick up garbage. No one can stop me from doing that. And so one day, three of us were swimming. We grabbed a kayaker, stuffed a laundry basket in the kayak in front of him, and said, just follow us, please. And we got a bushel. We got, I think, 27 golf balls, sunglasses, a couple of bikini bottoms, like you do. And we got about a bushel of stuff. And we thought we were hot stuff. Now we get 1 to 200 pounds of stuff every time. So somebody said, wow, we're a bunch of old ladies against underwater garbage, and it stuck. Nothing happened for a couple of years. Then we started up again as 5 friends. And within the year, suddenly we were 20 people. And then we were an organization. Now we're 30. And that's larger than we should be. And we have a list of, depending on how you count them, 45 to 50 women just in the Eastern Massachusetts area who want to join. Everybody who sees us wants the magic stuff that we're smoking, wants the joy, wants the enthusiasm, wants the energy that we don't have it. We find it, we get it, we dance with the pond, and it gives us back this wonderful feeling, and everybody wants it. So we have actually 5 states and 2 countries, Belgium and Sweden, who are ready to start chapters, and we're working towards it as fast as we can.
Our mission is to empower the next generation of explorers. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend and have them join the expedition. I mentioned just previously that I happened to have met you on Cape Cod on one of those expeditions. And the first thing that struck me is that there was a lot of smiling and laughing, and that all the women who were there, over 65, and I'm not telling any state secrets that you're in your mid 85, right. Mid 80s. Yeah. And yet this was not the activity I expected to see at, you might see some assisted living type places where people do certain things. I almost felt like, yes, you're making a gesture of throwing up right now. And I know the day that I was with you and you wouldn't let me swim in the water with you because I hadn't been certified and I identify as a different gender. But I felt like, there was a lot of laughing and having fun, which is always good. But there was almost like a cult-like following. I just felt like there were a lot of people who, as you said, I want to be part of this. And you and I have spoken about this before, that you go from a group of friends who you all know each other, do other things outside, to someone saying, hey, can you get me in? Or, can I be on that list? And it suddenly got something that you didn't necessarily originally start with.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that, but it went from a group of friends to an energy bar that we hadn't intended on, creating or marketing or anything, but suddenly we had a product, suddenly we had an experience that everybody wanted. And it took us years to catch up with that, so that when we would be interviewed, say in 2022 or even 2023, when we would be interviewed and the microphone would come out and why do you do this? You look as if you're having so much fun. And you would get, because we inspire women of a certain age. We inspire everybody to stay active. And people would nod and say, yeah, that's it. And then the next person would come along and they'd say, it's because we raise environmental awareness. We're doing a really good thing. You may not care whether the glass bottle that the eel lives in is at the bottom of your pond, but you sure should care that the spent fireworks leaking perchlorates or the car battery and stuff like that are in your pond. So we're doing good work. We're inspiring people. We're educating people. And we work always, every single dive, with the community. We get them out in their kayaks to receive the trash so they know, because we're dealing with a source of invisible trash. Nobody saw this before. No one's done it before. So every pond on Cape Cod, 860, has 300 years worth of trash. I don't say 2,000 because the really old stuff gets covered with muck, but we get bottles that are 125 years old. We get some really old stuff. The benefits of joining the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage, or OLAG, have been slow in a sense for us to be able to define. And we haven't even gotten to the good one.
What does this say about our maybe thoughts on how we age? I think that if you would have talked to the 40-year-old Susan Baur, someone about half the age, and if you would have said at 85 you'd be swimming 2 miles, you might have said, that doesn't sound realistic. I mean, you must.
I would not have said that. I would have said something much stupider. I would have said, holy crap, I'll kill myself if I can't be swimming and running and bicycling. I do not see any way of being old and happy at the same time. That's what I would have said at 40. That's what I would have said at 60. But now I wouldn't say that.
So what have you learned about the aging process that you don't think's either being addressed, or that?
I wouldn't call it the aging process. I'd call it the living process. What the reaction to the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage says to me, and I'm just sort of discovering this, is we live in such a way that the pleasure that we get comes from consuming experiences, material goods, and we buy experiences and we buy products, and we are encouraged to have a little retail therapy. But people don't have the stuff that really makes you happy, which is the purpose and the connection to planet Earth. So now we're going to get right to what I think is the most important part of OLAG, and that is that inadvertently, I do everything inadvertently. I don't have a plan and go for it. It just sort of happens. Inadvertently, I came up with a task, which is to take the garbage from, say, 10, 11 feet out of the pond, 5 feet, 4 feet, 3 inches, that whole literal area. I came up with a way of doing that inadvertently puts women in the flow. Now, the flow is a psychological term. Some people say it's in the zone. But if you get a human being that is trying physically, we are embodied, we are physical bodies in that water that are challenged right up to the max. We're in that water between an hour and an hour and a half. That water can be 62 degrees, it can be 75 degrees. We are cold, we are tired, we are swimming a mile, as much as 2 miles, different ones for different strengths in the people. But all of them have one thing in common: the thoughts of what you're going to cook, what the warning light on your car means, whether your dog or cat needs to go to the vet. All of those thoughts are not just pushed onto the back burner, they're gone. You are just a body, and you are just doing this one thing that you think is challenging and worthwhile and right at the limit of your capability. And when you do that, the old psychologist William James said, you are released from the cage of yourself and you see with new eyes. You see the underwater world, which happens to be the last fragments of true wilderness on Cape Cod. And whether it's a shaft of light that comes down, whether it's a 6-pound bass with a giant hook out of his mouth, whether it's the bees that swarm the water lilies at a certain time of year, you are just in it. You are part of it. And the wonder that you feel every time you're struck, spellbound, awestruck, wonderstruck, it forms a we between you and some part of the natural world. That's what our magic sauce is. That's what people lack and gravitate to. We have lost our essential embodied connection to the planet. And we try to get it from other people. Oh, I'm going to fall in love again this week. We try to get it from experience, from consumer goods, from great trips to exotic places. Thank you, Explorers Club. That's not how you get it. You get it by this one-on-one, slightly dangerous, really specific connection to the natural world. And that's why I say to you, Richard, I think wonder plays an essential part in exploration. And it's easy to picture that if you're going for the North or South Pole or the moon, but it's just as true if you're going to the bottom of the pond. And what this does for explorers or for the definition of exploration is it makes it clear that it's not just me, an explorer, doing something to the South Pole. Ha ha ha, I got here, I see you. It is how the world changes us. And I believe that every exploration is a two-way. I think every true explorer is changed by the work he or she does.
Susan, I have to say that there's the experience and then there's the post experience. And
That's
those are
true. That's
generally
true.
very different. Having skied
That's
to the
true.
North Pole and being very cold during the majority of it and just
Yeah.
trying to stay warm. I can't say that I felt the embodiment of where I was. You know, it was just the menial thing, you know, stay warm. You know, you have interesting conversations for sure, and you try to take in as much as you can, but the post experience tended to be greater. And so
When the bubbles came out of the champagne, right?
yeah, but so what I saw from your group is
Yeah.
almost the opposite, maybe, because I saw people really enjoying themselves in the moment. And I don't often see that. I saw the smiles, the laughs,
You
the
didn't see the
camaraderie.
underwater though. The underwater part, I can't pronounce the guy's name who came up with the term flow, but it's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi or something like that. Hungarian, worked at University of Chicago. He discovered it rock climbing and realized that in the moment he was so connected to the natural world, so connected to the rock that he felt nothing. He wasn't laughing on the way up the climb. But once he came out, he realized that was the pinnacle of happiness for him. He was as real. I mean, the goal in life is to be alive and to know it. He was as alive then as he ever was. And so after he got off the rock, after you got off the North Pole, after I get off the pond, then we say, wow, that was terrific.
So, Susan, you recently received an honor. You became part of the Explorers Club 50, and the slogan is 50 people who are changing the world that the world needs to know about. So I often ask people, you know, what they would tell their younger selves, but when you meet younger people, they seem very stressed out and very
Yeah.
not in the moment. What is it that you tell or tell them or think about? I mean, I want to shake sometimes people up and get them off their phones, right? I don't know if that's going to happen.
No, but stick them on a rock face, and all of a sudden it's just you and the planet. Stick them underwater and say your job is to come up with, let's see if you can get 50 dives in the next hour. You know, that's about one a minute, couple strokes, down you go, couple strokes, down you go. And if you find a tire or a futon or we got a kayak, if you get that off the floor from 8 feet down, you're going to need help. So get some other women. And we live in one big ecosystem, which is Earth community, or whatever you want to call it. And all the parts are connected. And every scientist knows that, and every explorer really knows that. And it's our support system. There's no plan B. There isn't any other support system. That's our support system. Do you really want to not know anything about the creatures and plants that your life depends on?
I do.
I have an intimate life with turtles. In fact, I was swimming one time and one of them paraded in front of me, and I thought, that's not normal. Why is this turtle going back and forth, back and forth? And I wiggled my hands and I said nice things to the turtle. didn't want any of it. All of a sudden, I felt in my wetsuit the little pricks of their fingernails are like little dental instruments. And up the back it came, whacked me on the neck, and I'm freaking out and trying to get this turtle off. Parades in front of me, and then I noticed that there's a lump the size of a lima bean at the base of his tail. He had a heart on. I was being hit on by a turtle. I was shocked and delighted because suddenly I realized everything out there is an individual. Every turtle, every tree, every a fish, every eel, they are individuals. And when I waded out of that water that day, the earth was a much bigger place. Everything in it went from a thing I could use to a being I could relate to. There's your answer to the phone. There's your answer to the hopelessness. If you're in a lot of relationships, you're a lot happier than if you're surrounded by things you can use.
So what's the short-term and long-term plan here? You sort of develop as things come along, but if you had to sort of put the 10-year marker, where do you see Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage? Where do you see you?
I see me dead in 10 years. I mean,
do you really?
People in my
I don't
family,
think you think that.
I do think that. People in my family don't last past about 88. And then we have a saying, up in the morning, dead at night. Not bad. Anyway, I'm certainly not counting on 10 years. But if I look ahead to, say, 5 years, I would like to see a chapter of the Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. In 5 years, I sure would like to see at least 20 of them, and I would like to see each one of those spinning off another 10 or 20. I shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. Explorers Club has had chapters, Dunkin' Donuts has chapters, Jane Goodall's wonderful institute has chapters. If I can just figure out how to do this, and we are working, and Explorers Club is helping me with this. Barbara Hoffman, who is an attorney, is just doing wonderful work with me, and I appreciate that so much.
Listen, I had a grandmother who died at 103, but at 99, she actually bowled 200. And I knew a woman from the Explorers Club, lived to 108. She had her marbles all the way through. So the paradigms of what we think is old. I mean, when I was a kid, I'd see old pictures of Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. Those guys looked old, right? This is the 1920s.
Yeah.
They just looked old. And Susan, my friend, you are not an old spirit.
No, I think not. I remember looking at my aunt one day, it was during the summer, and she said something about marriage is difficult, but I'm 40 and I've been married for 15 years. And I thought, 40, who cares what your marriage is like at 40? You're done, So I've changed my tune a bit since then.
I do look forward to seeing and speaking to you again. You and I always have these wonderful conversations. We will continue to email, and I will put it in my day planner for 2035.
Okay, Richard. Good for you. But I would love to talk to you more about the role of wonder and exploration, because I think the true explorer is changed by the experience. And that's the hallmark.
Susan, you did not disappoint. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Now we have a little favor to ask. We'd really appreciate your support, so make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. See you out on the trail.